Power creep does not exist in Zenless Zone Zero. Well, not yet at least. It does have some elements of it, but one, it's not to the level that people are making it out to be, and two, it's irrelevant when talking about a game like this. However, I still don't like the conversations that are being had about ZZZ and the state that it's in right now. I've been seeing and participating in way too many discussions about the quote-unquote power creep that ZZZ has, and I personally am sick of it. I'm sick and tired of hearing these tourists coming from Star Rail and spewing straight up incorrect things about this game. So I'm here to put an end to this conversation once and for all. I do want to acknowledge that I definitely and most certainly cannot speak for every player's behalf when it comes to clearing content. Every account has different characters on them, so I won't know what it's like to be missing out on account saving agents like Miyabi or Caesar. However, I'd like to argue that this game is so brain dead easy to play and understand to the point where it does not matter how bricked your account is. I'll talk about that later on, but for now, I want to talk about power creep first. Now, what does the word power creep mean and where did it come from? I looked at the word and went with the first non-AI definition. Wiktionary states that power creep is the situation where successive updates or expansions to a game introduce more powerful units or abilities, leaving the older ones underpowered. And while this definition is great for an entry-level understanding, I prefer Planarium's definition more, stating that power creep, sometimes known as feature creep, occurs when new elements are introduced into a game with increased strength or abilities, making the existing elements much weaker or even useless. When this happens several times, the original elements end up being pointless. And as the newer content becomes more powerful, it can mean the game loses balance and fairness, and strategy is impacted. Power creep is especially common in multiplayer video games, trading card games, and other competitive or collectible-based games, with most early game TCGs being the definitive starting point for this definition, tracing things back to Magic the Gathering in the 90s and Yu-Gi-Oh! In the late 2000s. Now, looking back into Wiktionary's definition, yes, Zenless has introduced multiple limited characters who are more powerful than previous agents. The most popular example that people love to bring up being Ellen and Miyabi. But A, that's a lazy way to say that this game has power creep. B, these characters all specialize and fill a specific niche from one another. And C, it is unfair to these older characters to deem them as suddenly useless because X new character comes around. This game is nowhere near close to Planarium's definition of power creep yet, and you are more than capable of clearing content with any of the standard S-rank characters than whatever limited unit is on banner right now. You can easily tell that the people crying about power creep in ZZZ have never played a real gacha game to know what power creep is when they see it. But I'm not here to poke fingers. We've already established that ZZZ is a gacha game, and it does have some elements of power creep due to it being virtually unavoidable. The game has to entice players into pulling for newer units after all. However, I'd like to argue that the power creep that Zenless has at the moment is very irrelevant. So I'm going to prove that Zenless's power creep is irrelevant by judging it based on 3 different factors. 1. Is the endgame content designed around the new premium character? And if not, can you clear all forms of content and obtain maximum polychrome rewards with any character in the game? 2. Does the existence of limited agents in varying classes make older units obsolete? And 3. Are W engines and other limited agents required for characters to exist on teams? And do A ranks need premium options in order to be viable? I'm going to be as concise with this as possible, but I just want to get my point across so that all this confusion is cleared up. I absolutely adore this game to death, and I hate to see people from other gacha game communities bad-mouthing it for something it does not have because the game that they come from has way more power creep than this one. I know these gacha games love to thrive off of FOMO, and it's especially bad with ZZZ. So I'm gonna try my best to talk about why we shouldn't be worried about this so-called power creep just yet. Without further ado, let's dive into it. Going into my first question, is the endgame content specifically designed to be cleared only by the shiny new premium agent? And if this is not the case, can you obtain maximum polychrome rewards from the endgame content with any character in the game? We'd have to look at the main endgame mode where people are claiming the power creep comes from, which is Deadly Assault. And while Shio Defense is probably the main endgame mode with the most polychrome rewards, I'd argue that that's probably the easiest form of endgame content in ZZZ, but we'll talk about that briefly later on. Hey there, Editing Rune here. here. About halfway through recording this, I realized that a lot of people are going to make the argument that Shiyu Defense is instead the real endgame mode as opposed to Deadly Assault, and to that they would 100% be right. My point still remains the same after realizing this because I still think Shiyu Critical Node is the easiest form of endgame in ZZZ, so if anything, the argument that I apply here makes a lot more sense when it's applied to Shiyu. But the overall point is that anything is achievable so long as you continue to play the game. Alright, back to the video. This is by far the definitive endgame mode, with people claiming things like Bringer's a Miyabi check, Pompey's a Bernice check, and what have you. However, if you've been playing this game for longer than like 2 months, you'll definitely have enough characters to make at least 3 teams by this point. And the characters that are on them shouldn't really matter. As long as you have a few limited characters and good elemental coverage, you should be fine. The only way an account can be bricked, like how people are describing their own, is if you literally just started the game a week ago and didn't even get your free selector from the 300 pulls. Assuming you actually, play the game, you can get enough polychromes to get an S rank. Whether you lose a 50-50 or not, it's still either a new character or another option to clear DA, which can also be another new character. Your account's going to have at least 3 S ranks by the time you finish chapter 5. 4 if you're including Aramasa. So the average player's account is going to have a fair abundance of options for obtaining at least 6 stars, which is the minimum requirement for all of the polychrome rewards in Deadly Assault. It'd be one thing if DA required you to 9-star to get all of the polys, but ZZZ is incredibly lenient with its requirements, which makes the argument of power creep pretty null and void considering that you don't need to put as much effort into this game mode to get all of the polys. And seeing that you unlock Deadly Assault after chapter 3, it's clear that Hoyoverse wants you to get a head start into this game mode so that you know what you want to build your agents towards. People tend to act like it's very easy to get soft locked in this game just because they either have terrible builds or don't have characters like Miyabi, when in reality, one of the agents you get at the start of the game can literally 20k Deadly Assault like it's nothing. By himself too! If a solo Billy with a Brimstone can 20k a DA node, then your M0W1 Ellen has no excuse to not be doing more than that every time. And even if you don't have any of the cool shiny premium agents that you need for Deadly Assault, it's not like you can't clear anything at all with the A ranks. I've seen videos of people clearing DA with just Piper and Lucy while getting 20k. Oh, but they're probably running some sort of premium option in slot. They're running their own signatures. Most of the time, unless it's a solo run or if it's like Ben or something, these A ranks can 20k Deadly Assault if you just simply play better. Get good, if you will. Yes, some of these accounts have M6 and W5 with these A ranks, but I've seen videos of like an M2 Corrin 20k'ing Deadly Assault. You can make the argument that the Billy clear is with Brimstone, so it's sort of not free to play, but Corrin here is on her own personal. What's the excuse? It just goes to show that both Deadly Assault and these A rank characters are long-term projects, and neither of them are going anywhere. It was added during 1.4, 5 months well into the game's lifespan. So unless you're literally refusing to pull on any banner for more than 2 months, there's no reason why you shouldn't have M6 of at least 2 A ranks right now. And even if you don't, it's not like you need the copies to clear the content with them to begin with. I'm getting very off topic, so let me bounce back a bit. The original question was, is the endgame content specifically designed to be cleared only by the shiny new premium agents? And to that I will say, no. Deadly Assault does not have any specific boss that revolves around Frostburn, additional attacks, none of that. And it can be cleared by any agent in the game, barring you having the right builds and playing extremely well. There are bosses like the robots that put up shields, making them impervious to damage, and the brute boss that intentionally shocks himself. Both of these types of enemies requiring you to inflict specific anomalies, with the brute getting impaired and having a ton of days added to his stun meter as a reward for triggering disorder. While these are bosses that require specific mechanics to make their fight substantially easier, the concept of anomaly and disorder are not tied specifically to a singular unit. Yes, there are anomaly class agents, but every agent can inflict anomaly or disorder with their EX skills, and it's just a matter of having electric or fire agents for the shielded robots. Neither of these types of enemies show up in Deadly Assault, but I did still want to bring them up because they do revolve around some sort of mechanic. I just wanted to specify that it's not character specific. While Bringer definitely explodes against a Miyabi, this does not mean that other characters are incapable of clearing this boss as well. This being the definitive endgame mode means that it'll take a while for you to effectively clear it, meaning that it's going to take some practice, but isn't inherently impossible due to you not having specific agents. Yes, Miyabi is better than Ellen, but it isn't because she power creeps Ellen, it's because she power creeps literally everyone else in the game. She is in her own class, tiers above everybody else. And Miyabi's sole existence in the game doesn't mean that Ellen is suddenly unusable. Regardless of if you have M2, M1, or even M0, I've cleared endgame content with this character with literally no disc equipped. Sure, it was one of the earlier stages of Shiyu defense, but that still shouldn't discredit this character's strength at all. Assuming you're running the standard build for Ellen with her weapon, that should be getting at least 21k normally on bosses like the marionettes. And if you're not getting these results, it's either because A, your build sucks and could use better substat rolls, or B, you're just not playing optimally, and that's okay. Again, you only need 6 stars, 2 across each node, to obtain all the polychrome rewards. So anything after that is either because you care that much about full clearing or really want the investigation points. And Ellen normally should be averaging 15k even if you've got a free-to-play build on her. And if you aren't averaging those numbers, it's not because you don't have Miyabi, you just suck at the game and need to get better. I'm not saying this to be an asshole or anything, I'm saying this out of a love for this game and all of the new players trying it out and wanting to get better at it. Yes, this is a gacha game and Powercreep will eventually plague it in the future, but it's such an irrelevant thing in ZZZ to be worrying about when you could just take the time to simply get better at the game. Dedicating at least 10 to 15 minutes a day to just playing the game for its mechanics will absolutely yield better results for you. And I promise that you don't need to waste money getting the shiny units every banner in hopes of future-proofing your account. I got so caught up in this point that I completely forgot that this was a bullet-pointed segment here. I suppose I answered a bit of the second question in the previous point, but I will touch upon that briefly now. Does the existence of limited agents in varying classes make older units obsolete? Meaning, are these characters suddenly unusable due to X agent existing? The answer to this is a definite maybe, simply because the only character that falls into this category is Soldier 11 at the time of this video. That being said, again, the existence of Evelyn does not mean that Soldier 11 is suddenly incapable of clearing content like she was before. I was able to clear content before I had Evelyn with Soldier 11, and I still am able to, regardless of if I have her or not now. Piper, Grace, Nicole, and Anton all do things as opposed to their limited counterparts, but that doesn't mean that these characters are suddenly null and void from teams just because you have these premium options on your account, except for Anton. If you have Harumasa, please invest into your Harumasa, do not build Anton. Hell, Nicole is being ran with Astra on teams now, and it's great. And in the case of Ben and Seth with Caesar, it really just comes down to what agent needs what tank. Yeah, you can toss Caesar around since she's as open as your average furry relationship, but Ben and Seth still fill specific niches too. Like I mentioned earlier, these characters are more than capable of clearing all kinds of content on their own, with the A ranks being a longer investment since they naturally have lower stats than the S ranks. You don't need to pull Sandbee in fear of Harumasa getting weaker on the patch she comes out. If anything, Haru's getting buffed because he finally has a disk drive set that he can use in that update. The only thing that's changing between updates is the enemy health bars in certain modes, Shiyu defense for example. And this is the only thing that I deem is actually worth worrying about for now. But even with the HP inflation, which I'll probably talk about in another video, if you continue to have good execution and your rotations down to a T, I promise you that you will barely notice a difference. You may need to min-max your A ranks a bit more, but I don't think that should be much of a problem if you're decent enough at the game. Also, you should be leveling up all the characters you plan to use to at least level 55 since core passives matter a lot. I haven't had a problem with Shiyu ever since I pulled my Jane, and she was all the way back in October. So I'd like to say that no matter how fat they make these bosses, it's not going to matter if you just simply play better. I will talk about what we should be worried about when it comes to power creep towards the end though. Let me close out on this last point. Going into the last question I had, are W engines and other limited agents required for characters to exist on teams? And do A ranks need premium options such as W engines and limited characters in order to be viable? Let's assume that the word premium means that this agent or engine has to come from a limited time banner. I will excuse the standard S rank engines and agents from this because the engines are obtainable in the shop and you lose 50/50s to these standards and you have a free 300 pull selector agent. So these items will will not be considered premium. This one is a definite no, because all of these characters are specifically designed to be used with their signatures. And in fact, some limited options either lock characters out of effects or just straight up worsen slot for certain agents. Ben and Caesar, Billy and Nekomata, for example. My point is that limited W engines are rarely used on A ranks unless you're trying to do specific niche hypercarry builds. And half the times, the limited options usually have an effect that is so specific that these A rank characters don't care enough about them. And B doesn't need Chingy's weapon because it's a limited option. It's just an impact stat pattern with extra steps and 2% more impact than battery. And I only pulled Evelyn's weapon not just because I have her, but because it was specifically designed to be used by her and only her. Soldier 11 can use this weapon if she wants to, but Brimstone was designed specifically for basic attack DPS characters. And Soldier 11 is a basic attack DPS agent. What I'm getting at is that Hoyoverse designed both the characters and their weapons in such a way that they go together in tandem with each other. This doesn't work well with S ranks, but it sure as hell works wonders for A ranks, seeing as the availability of these W engines are so nice considering pulls are given to you every patch, which means that you don't need to hyper invest into unnecessary premium options just to be able to clear endgame content. To say that these characters require certain things to be viable is also bad faith. It's not really a question of does Nicole need Juyuan to be usable, it's more so Nicole is already usable and Juyuan wants her in order to do the most effective damage. This isn't like Star Rail where characters don't exist without copies, light cones, other premium units, said premium units light cones, other units, other premium units and their light cones. This game gives you the characters that work for literally every standard S rank character in the game for free. You start the game with Billy, Anby, and Nicole. Ben joins you at the start of chapter 2, Sokaku joins you after doing some Hollow Zero, and Korin is just chilling in your mailbox for starting this damn game. You sadly can't return to sender though. You also could have gotten Lucy for free if you did the Cheesetopia event back in 1.2, but she's gone now. And we're also going to be getting a free Poltra in the next update too, which is huge because she's going to be another free-to-play stunner agent. All of these free characters are like mixing matching puzzle pieces for your teams, and you can make just about any team you want depending on whatever S rank character you pull. Ben being Coletta's missing half and giving Grace some extra protection, Lycon and Rena helping Korin get to her damage shredding state easier, Lucy helping Soldier 11 get more DPS on the field, Nekomata can slot herself out with Billy and still be fine. And the crazy thing is that these characters do just fine on their own. They don't need the limited agents to be usable. If anything, the limiteds need the A ranks more. This game already has synergy built into its mechanics, so characters will automatically complement each other naturally. And in recent patches, limited characters are becoming less restrictive with their synergy requirements, having more broader needs such as classes as opposed to faction. This is good because it makes fielding free-to-play teams easier rather than having comps be restricted to a select 2 to 3 agents. So do I think the engines and limited agents are required to make certain characters usable? No, simply because synergy is already built into the game and every character can complement each other depending on how you build your teams. Alright, I know I yapped on for way longer than I promised I did, but let's condense everything down into one big summary and then talk about when we should start to worry about power creep and zenless. I'm a firm believer that if you take the time to slowly invest into your units and master everything about your favorites, I know you will be able to clear the endgame content without whatever shiny premium agent is on banner right now. As of 1.5, there's no boss that revolves around a specific agent's mechanic, and until that case, there will be no substantial power creep in this game, even with HP inflation. A ranks don't need premium options because their personals are usually their best in slot. Limited agents are also surprisingly flexible and can be used with the selection of free-to-play agents the game has given us so far. These units don't need other limited agents to exist, but said limited agents can also definitely help with clearing endgame content if you do own them. And the existence of other limited agents in the same class as previous ones don't render the older ones obsolete, for now. And even if those characters do end up being power crept in the future, who cares? They're still perfectly capable of clearing content in this game until Hoyo introduces bosses that interact with specific limited characters. And I think the only time that we should start worrying about power creep is when A ranks can't clear these types of content anymore due to the HP inflation. There's also the concern of disk drive sets. new ones being designed specifically for limited characters as of late. All of the new disk drives we've gotten have been created with the limited agents of that banner's time in mind. Protopunk and Chaos Jazz being Caesar and Bernice's sets, Branch and Blade and Astral Voice being Miyabi and Astra sets, and now the new additional attacks set designed for Sanbi. So far, I'd argue that the sets we've gotten now haven't been very restrictive to characters at all. Astral Voice is pretty much universal for any support now, and Chaos Jazz has been good for the anomaly agents that can use it. The only one that's restrictive is BNBS, but that's because it's for Miyabi, and Miyabi is, again, in her own league. And even then, every DPS agent loves the 2-piece of this set, so it's not even as restrictive as people are saying it is. Until they introduce a boss that resists all attacks except additional attacks, I don't think Sanbi, disk drives, or anyone else coming in the future should be making us concerned just yet. As of 1.5, I think it's safe to say that with all of these different channels dedicating themselves to clearing content with specific A ranks, I don't think we need to worry about power creep anytime soon. As for the course of limited banners, only time will tell if power creep is really something that'll heavily impact the game in the future. Moral of the story? Get good at the video game. And that's it for this video. I'm absolutely enjoying doing these longer form Zenless videos, so do let me know what you think of them in the comments. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content from me as well. I've been streaming every other day here on YouTube, so if you have any questions or just want to hang out, feel free to drop by next time I'm live. Join the Discord if you haven't already, and consider supporting me by either becoming a member or donating to my coffee. I get more of the proceeds over there, by the way. Members will get included at the end of my videos, and coffee members will get an exclusive role in my Discord server. With that being said, I gotta get going back to my Evelyn testing. And don't worry, I will be making a follow-up video about her and Ben, so keep those eyes peeled out for that. I'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.